let's paint the picture for somebody too, kind of, in the moment. I am homeless. Where am I? Where do I sleep? Am I on the sidewalk? Am I in a park? Am I under a bridge? Kind of set the scene for somebody, and I have not been homeless, so I don't know. I want to understand the picture and try to see it as well as I can through your lens.
So I think one of the big issues with being homeless, or at least like I don't know if it was one of my big issues or something maybe that helped me in the long run. But you're constantly moving. You can't stay in one place, as I said before. So sometimes you're able to find somewhere to like lay and sort of like make your own home base, quote unquote. So like make an encampment, things like that, where you can stay for a while. I never had the ability to do that. I never had somewhere where I could make like a makeshift home, right? And make an encampment somewhere that I could stay long term. I never had that luxury. So I was constantly on the move whenever it was winter. And, believe it or not, Texas gets ice. Texas does get cold sometimes. Um, I'd end up sleeping behind a building on on a patio. Um, and I remember we had one of like the worst ice storms that we had in years. And I remember just sleeping on just a patch of ice back on this front porch on this little patio behind an insurance building. And having those little corners definitely helps like keep heat in. But where you're staying definitely changes from time to time. So depending on if it's cold, you're gonna try and find like a small little corner to huddle into. Um, Most of the time you're on the ground. You really don't have any other options but be on the ground. Um, and then other times, let's say if it's raining, you're going to be under a bridge at times. I had issues though whenever I would stay under bridges. The police a lot of times would come and bother me, and so I'd end up trying to go somewhere else and find somewhere else to go. Um, I didn't do a lot of sleeping in fields. It was mainly under bridges and behind buildings whenever I did find somewhere to go. Or what is it? Carport, not carports, but the big concrete structures where you can big concrete like parking lots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so a lot of times those are really nice places to go because it's helping block wind. It also helps like insulate because of all the concrete around you. There's not like a big open area. Um, or there was one time I was able to find an abandoned house that I was able to stay in for a couple of weeks at a time, and that was great. Like I remember being so excited and being like, I have somewhere to go. Like I know I have somewhere to go. So I guess at one point I did have that luxury of a stable housing situation. Um, so I think sometimes you're going to find these little places that you're going to be able to go for a little bit. And when I say a little bit, I mean like maybe 3 days. That's a long time. At least in my situation, being able to stay in the same place for 3 days, amazing. Instead of having to constantly just move. But I think while you're constantly moving, that also helps you out because then you're not too focused on your situation. You're just in survival mode. So then you don't get too hung up on, I guess, what's going on, really.
How did you find that house?
So I had been, I don't know if I want to call this guy a friend. But I had this guy who I used to use with a lot of times. And he basically used me for my money. And different other things that I'm not going to dive into. But he had this place where he used to like to go all the time to go and shoot up or use drugs. And he used to stay behind the house on the patio. Um, and so I always asked him, I was like, why are you sitting out here on the patio? And he basically was just like, uh, because I pass out before I'm able to get inside. I was like, okay. Um, So I went ahead and it's basically just a place my friend used to like to go to use, and so I'm going there.
So you open the door and you walk inside, and there's obvious that nobody's lived there in a
Yeah,
while.
so it was under renovation. And so there was no windows, there was not really any flooring, there was no walls. It was just sort of whenever you're doing like it's basically just the framework of a house.
Okay,
Um, and so there was some plywood on the floor, but other places there was no flooring at all. Um, things like that. But it did lock, right? It did lock, which was nice.
which is huge, right?
It's huge because I felt so much safer being in there. Just the fact that I can lock a door. Granted, it wasn't my house, and it's weird thinking of the fact that you can lock someone else's house, but it's like it used to be a crack house actually. Um, and it got raided at one point, and so I assume that's why no one had ever gone back to that house. Um, but basically just the framework of a house, missing flooring, didn't have walls, anything like that. But I was able to lock it and like sleep sound at night.
What what um what caused you to have to leave that place then?
So after a while, like I would notice other people's, so I would notice other people's needles like around the house. And it wasn't people's needles that I knew because the different needles have different types.
Mm.
And so I would know like if it was my friends, um, or I would know if it was like a different random person. So it turns out that other people had been going there either when I wasn't there or while I was there, and I just didn't know it. Um, and so that obviously makes you kind of uneasy. But I think the reason I left ultimately was I was able to go to my grandma's for a little bit, and then I had some some following events where I overdosed twice in less than 24 hours. Um, and then I went directly to treatment.
And that story ends up leading you to California ultimately.